War I war. World War I was a multi-continental war fought between 1914 to 1918. It claimed the lives of roughly 20 million people between civilians and military personnel. It was fought between the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria, and the Entente or Allied Powers, France, United Kingdom, Russia, Serbia, Italy, Belgium, Romania, the United States, Greece, and others. The main ideological trends between the two sides were authoritarianism and monarchies among the Central Powers, while the Entente tended to be more democratic. This is a trend, not a rule, with Russia being an example of a country in the Entente which was still under the authority of their Tsar, which brings me to who led each country at the start of the war. The German Empire was led by Kaiser Wilhelm II, who was cousins with the leader of Russia, Tsar Nicholas II. Both of these men were also cousins with the leader of the United Kingdom, King George V. France was led by Georges Clemenceau. Finally, the leader of the Austro-Hungarian Empire was Franz Joseph, who would die a few years into the war in November of 1916. Now, how did this war actually start? Well, many would simply say the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. This is a huge oversimplified answer, and will not cut it on most exams. Most teachers and historians have summed up the root causes into 4 categories: militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism. This can be remembered by the acronym MAIN, which is how most people refer to them. Starting with militarism, there are 2 main points to this cause. Every major power, those being France, the UK, Austria, Germany, and Russia, were all very militaristic nations, simply meaning they had a large presence when it comes to militaries and had large institutional respect for their own armies. This also meant that each country's respective military had a lot of sway in that country's decision-making. Additionally, there had been a ton of technological development in recent years, such as the machine guns and aircraft, and most major powers had not had an opportunity to test them out on the battlefield yet. Throwing these 2 factors together made each country incredibly tense and unstable when it came to the idea of war, as we will soon see. But enough about the military, let's get into the geopolitics of the time. The world of 1914 geopolitically was broken up into 2 main alliances: the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente. The Triple Alliance was made up of Germany, Austria, and Italy, making up Central Europe. The Triple Entente was composed of the United Kingdom, France, and Russia. As you may have realized, this is not exactly how the countries fell when it came time for war, but we will get to this in another video. Alliances were incredibly important to World War I because of one main doctrine: balance of power. Balance of power was a universal idea adopted among the great powers, which simply said that one country cannot gain too much power, or it will threaten the security of all of Europe. To combat this, the various powers had allied with each other to maintain the balance between the 2 sides, so one side was not too strong. This started with Germany, a new country, rising from Otto von Bismarck's vision, with a booming economy, industry, military, and most importantly, sense of neglect. France, the UK, and Russia all feared the rise of this empire, and joined together to keep the balance of power. In response, Austria and Italy were recruited by the Germans over distrust of the Russians and French respectively, which also kept the balance of power. The balance of power also needed to be reinforced with calls to action from both sides should one be invoked into a war, because they needed to keep their threat if they wanted any sort of international legitimacy. Long story short, this doctrine meant one power going to war was basically the same as all of Europe at war. Thirdly, imperialism. Imperialism, also known as colonialism, was a huge factor specifically for Germany. As previously mentioned, Germany was a rising star, and therefore was late to all of the colonies, leaving them with few. Moreover, Britain and France wanted pieces of the German and Ottoman colonies, which caused strife and tension between these parties. The reason these colonies were valued so highly was simply that they projected power across the world. They also had a lot of economic value when it came to raw materials and resources. So if a country had more colonies, they essentially had a better claim on the world as it was seen. Finally, we have nationalism. Nationalism, for the purpose of this video, is being defined as pride in one's country and its interests to the extent where it dehumanizes other people's countries in comparison. Nationalism was highly common and culturally accepted among all great powers in Europe. When you have so much pride in one's country, it is incredibly tough to let anyone or anything on any level insult your country. And it is very tough for countries to let things go from history. For example, the Franco-Prussian War ended with Germany taking some territory from France, and even though it was decades later, millions of Frenchmen wanted to see their country take back what they saw as rightfully theirs. This can all be summed up with a single analogy. It's like having a bunch of arrogant bullies, who are all incredibly strong. That is the militarism in one locked room. They all create different backhanded deals. Those represent alliances. The bullies also all want to take each other's lunch money, which represents colonialism, and everyone is prideful, and no one can ever let anything go. That is the nationalism. As soon as something breaks out, it cannot be stopped. Just like in this analogy, all of these factors of militarism, alliance, imperialism, and nationalism contribute heavily to the causes of World War I.